Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to present tonight. I'm excited to share our story. Just a little bit about the Mississippi Audubon chapter. We are a chapter of National Audubon. We were founded in 1972, and we're committed to wildlife preservation in the Rockford region. I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that we work on in the community as well. The Audubon Mural Project, there are 9 murals in the downtown vicinity. And these are birds that are identified on the Survival by Degrees or the Birds and Climate Change report that Audubon puts out. So we try and highlight species that will be impacted by climate change and engage the community through public arts. We do mural walks as well each year. And if you're a member of National Audubon Society, the upcoming summer issue, I'm excited to share that it's the 10th anniversary of the Audubon Mural Project, which actually started in New York City, but we are featured as an offsite project of that in the National Audubon magazine, and I'm super excited that Rockford's going to get a shout out in their magazine this summer. Another project that's also related to the Survival by Degrees report. We've just worked with a musician locally to put out these 2 bird songs albums, also birds featured on that report. The Sounds of the Mississippi Flyway also features birds in the state of Illinois that are considered threatened and endangered. Comes with these educational cards, so there's an educational component to it, and I'm super proud to be part of this project as well. We do have an IBA in Winnebago County. It's in Durand. It's called Colored Sands Forest Preserve, and attached to that forest preserve is Sand Bluff Bird Observatory, which does a lot of banding in the spring and summer during spring migration. It's a great place to visit. It's one of our highlights, I think, in our community. You can go out to visit this banding station and see these birds up close. It's run completely 100% by volunteers. And John Long Henry, who's on the call, is one of the volunteers up there. And lastly, our Nest camera. I think over the years, this has just gotten more and more popular. We've had it up on this particular building for 7 years now. There's actually 2 cameras, and one is on the west side of the building, one is on the north side. And you can see the amount of water in that gutter right there. All of the gutters were redone this previous summer. So they're not having that water accumulate in the gutters anymore, which is great. And they've done a lot. In fact, they've done so far all of their construction work around the schedule of the birds, which is also fantastic. Getting a little more concerned as they get the building ready for tenants, what's going to happen on the 8th floor, but time will tell. We still, I think, have probably maybe 3 or 4 more years before it gets to that. And we have to start worrying about any type of tenants in the building. So I have a little bit of an agenda that I'll go through. And some of the photos that are in my presentation are actually featured. Our John Long Henry's, who is one of our volunteers as well, and does some beautiful photographs of the birds. So what we can't capture on camera, he is capturing out on the ground. I'm going to go a little bit over just the decline in the recovery and how it's relevant to Rockford, talk about our Rockford birds, our official city bird designation, a little bit about the building, because the building has an interesting history. And I'll also talk about the cameras that we use, because I get a lot of questions on that, and the cost of those and all that. And I have a couple more videos to share, some of my favorite videos that I've captured off those cameras. Historically, there used to be about 350 to 400 pairs of peregrines in the Midwest, but as we all know, in the 1960s, DDT, a pesticide, was prevalently used, almost wiped out peregrines in our area. The last recorded breeding pair in Illinois before their disappearance from the state was in 1951. And the Peregrine Fund, that was based at Cornell University, and then a lot of other organizations really worked collaboratively in this major conservation effort to restore peregrines in the Midwest, particularly in Illinois. The Field Museum, the Chicago Academy of Science, the Lincoln Park Zoo, the Illinois Department of Conservation, and the Illinois Audubon Society. And in 2015, they were actually taken off of the Illinois state threatened and endangered species list, as some of you may already be aware. Mary is the one who coordinates banding in Rockford, just like she coordinates it for the rest of the state. And we certainly appreciate that she comes to Rockford and does this with us, because it is not only the highlight of my year, but there are so many people in our community that watch this camera now. And even when we do the live banding and do the Zoom, we have people from all over the world that join it. And if you look at our diversity of countries, that Mississippi has grown over the years. Just, I think, because of the peregrine falcons is phenomenal. We have a lot of people from all over the world that watch this camera and follow us on social media. The Register Star News Tower, it's also known as the iconic Energy now, is a landmark building in our community. It's the first known established location in Rockford. And as Mary has told me, the nest site location has little to do with height. Peregrines like to be able to see around them while incubating the eggs. They don't like high walls. They preferably like to be protected from prevailing winds. And the location that Louise has selected on this building is actually a gutter. When we first went up there was no lining or nothing in the gutter, and it's been adjusted to accommodate her. But it is a beautiful view from up there on the 8th floor. Probably one of the best in Rockford, I think. Of course, peregrines have a very strong nest fidelity, so she keeps coming back to this spot year after year. Even with any of the disturbances that have happened down there, last year they did a lot of repairs on the lower roof. They actually took off the cupola. I think that was late last year. They were around when that happened. They were across the river, I think, watching this come down to the ground. It happened pretty quickly. The cupola was set to go back up on the roof this spring, and they were already up there breeding and in courtship. And I think by the time they would have had it up there ready to install again, we already had eggs. We had eggs early this year. The first one arrived on March 14th. So it's great. I was a little bit worried with all the things going on last year that maybe she would decide that there's too much going on here, and she just continues to come back to, I think, the community's delight. The pair we have now includes Louise. She was hatched at Toronto's Canada Square site in Ontario, Canada in 2016. And then Brian is actually the third male. He comes from Columbia County, Wisconsin. His hatch date was 2019. He arrived on February 16th of 2021. And then the other two previous males, it's unclear what happened to them. You know, perhaps they moved on. The nice thing about Brian is that he sticks around during the winter and overwinters with Louise. These two birds took off during the fall and winter. So I don't know if something happened to them or if they got sidetracked and found another mate or exactly what happened. But we had Little Cool for 2 years. He also was a Wisconsin bird. And then we had Gigi, who was from the Evanston Public Library site for her first year here. And Louise has definitely fits the Peregrinus to wander name. She's been all over the place, and she was in Malta, Illinois, seen there. She was seen in Jefferson County, Wisconsin on this particular camera as well. And it's my understanding she did a little bit of traveling this past winter. It would be interesting to see where else she goes. We know for the majority of the time, though, she is in Rockford. We have our cameras running on that building 24/7, 12 months out of the year, and she definitely shows up in the wintertime as well as Brian. Their courtship actually was going on in February this year. Most of the time it begins in March. And I have a lot of clips in this. So I'll just share this because we get such great videos from our camera that shows the display of their courtship. And we've had a lot of snow with Louise. She's been through a lot. And this was April. This was this year. This is a video of her. It's kind of funny. She's watching the snow come down around her, but she really got buried this year in March when we had I think the snow lasted for about a day. It melted pretty quickly. And then our first year that we had a a clutch of eggs, only one of those hatched, and that was a chick that was named Hightower. And this is his first day. And the fun thing that we can do with our camera is do some time lapse videos. So I think it's interesting how busy they are. These were chicks in 2020 that were 12 and 14 days old. And it really just shows how busy they are from the time the sun comes up to the time the sun goes down, and taking turns feeding for their young. And they just start scooting around at this age, which is also a lot of fun to watch. I did do a time lapse of that snowstorm we had this year. Also, um, a cool video. And then as they transition from the time they're banded to the time they fledged, this also is Hightower. Um, it's just the development happens so fast, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. In this camera, I'm not sure what Louise sees in it. I know that there is a light that comes on when it records. So I don't know when we get some of these great shots of her looking directly in the camera, if she's looking at her reflection or if she notices the light in there. And I don't know, one of the other favorite things to see of these young birds is how they lay flat out on the ledges. Do a lot of wing flapping. So we're just able to capture a lot on these cameras. And, as the popularity has grown over the years, I know that our school system, I know at least a half dozen schools have these cameras going in their classrooms for education. I just actually put together a packet that I'm going to have available for teachers this next school year for their classrooms that has some peregrine falcon education in there for them. And this is almost right before fledging. The camera this particular year had dropped a couple times. Louise likes to sit on the camera. So this was like heavily duct taped to a bar. And then I'm going to show you what we've done since then, because the camera is actually a magnet that sits inside a little container now. But that's why the angle of this one is a little bit odd. But it's just a good video to show like how they practice hunting before fledging. And if we just go through the birds we've had over the year, we had Hightower in 2018. In 2019, Peaches, Sweetie, and Freddie, and this would have been Little Cool. First year was Gigi. Little Cool again, Rocky, Forest, and Harriet in 2020. That's when I added the west camera. For the first couple years, we just had the north camera up, and then I asked if I could, the camera pack came with two cameras. I asked if I could put the second one up, and they were agreeable, so we got that camera up so we could see what's going on the west side of the building. And then ever since Brian has arrived, Louise has had 5 eggs every year. We've not had, we've had 5 eggs hatch. All 5 have not survived. And I think part of that, and Mary can probably chime in here, is the hatch days are so far apart. We had a 5-day spread on one of them one year, and I think that little one just didn't have a chance underneath the big ones, because by the time they're 5 days old, their weight doubles from that first day of their hatch. And it's just, I think those little ones struggle to make it. This year we had 4 of the 5 hatch, and those are the 4 from that clutch there. And the names are part of a contest we do every year, which is, I'm going to talk about community engagement. But one of the nice things about banding, and you get so attached to these birds, you want to know what happens to them. And I always get emails, I don't know, probably once a month, asking, like, do I have any updates? Do I know where any of our birds are? And we only really hear about them when they've been caught on camera by a photographer, which is why those bands are so nice, those color bands, because the cameras can capture them, or if they're found deceased. So we have, right, I think most people are aware that, like, birds of prey have a 60% mortality rate during their first year of life. So we know we're going to lose some of our birds over the years. And we have, Sweetie was one of the first, I think, that we had received notification on that he was found in Brownsville, Texas. Peaches, also from that same year, was found in Ohio. In 2022, we had 2 birds, also from the same clutch, that had issues. Jane was found out at the Rockford airport, and Hope was found injured and deemed unreleasable. So she is at one of our local rehab facilities here in Winnebago County. On a positive note, somebody saw iconic Ike, who was one of the hatches from last year, and he was in McCordsville, Indiana. And he was spotted at a bait and tackle shop, kind of just sitting there and hanging out. So, and when I hear from Mary that, you know, one of the birds from Rockford has been found somewhere, I always make sure that we share that information and update our website so people who are looking for that type of information can find it. One of the things we also do in Rockford is we do have a fledge watch. This building is located on a busy street right next to a river, and there's just a lot of things that can happen. And this year was probably one of the most unique, in that it was the first year we actually had 2 of them end up in the river. But I can't thank our volunteers enough for doing this with us. We start at 5:30 in the morning. I think this year this group of 4 was super active, and I probably should have been down there earlier than 5:30, because I could hear them if I turned on the camera before, as I was getting ready to go down. They were like up and at them at 4:30 in the morning and doing a lot of wing flapping by 5 a.m. We did not have any fledge that early, thankfully. We offer volunteers shifts of 2 hours, so it's not too long, and we have approximately 12 volunteers every year. This year, a little less. But you can see them, they'll come down right in that street right there. And even though we tried to stop traffic this year, there was actually 2 people in the street trying to stop traffic. This was Lincoln that had come down into the middle of State Street there. The cars would just drive around us. I was a little frustrated with that because it did spook Lincoln, who then ran towards the bridge, which is a, you can kind of see it in the drone photo. and jumped up onto a bar and probably hadn't had enough experience gripping a bar and just fell right over into the river. It happened so fast. And then instinctively, I did not realize how fast this would happen, but he immediately started trying to swim. But the Rock River is known for its very fast current, very strong undertow. And it was a little bit, it was a little bit nerve wracking to watch him in the water moving pretty quickly. And there was a volunteer that was down there that literally jumped over a fence, ran down this walkway that runs along the side of the building down there by the river, jumped over another gate and stood on some rocks and waited for him to float past and grabbed him out of the river. The very next day, the female, who's the top right photo, that is Libby, same thing. She ended up in the river. She was able to swim to some rocks and get out. She kind of rested there for the day. And then she was kind of missing in action for a day. I was a little bit concerned, but she ended up showing up, and she's a pretty strong, dominant female. So takes after her mother for sure. But we have done rescues from the very first year Hightower came down on the streets. And throughout the year, we've had a lot of rescues where the building folks, Chuck is great. Chuck Downey is like the building engineer. He's been there since the Rockford Register Star days. He moved there with Iconic. I have him on my phone. I immediately call him and like, can we run a bird up to the 8th floor? And he'll get us up there on the 8th floor. One of the other things that is a challenge with us, and we try and educate these drone flyers when they're down there during Fledge Watch, but there's a lot of wedding facilities or event facilities in our downtown area. And while these birds have been in our community for 7 years, either they choose to ignore that they're down there or pretend that they're not down there, I don't know, but I'm surprised a lot of them have no idea that these birds exist on this building. And, when you have young birds that are getting ready to fly, or even adult peregrine falcons that are extremely territorial and aggressive like Louise, you really don't want to take your drone up by this building. Louise has been known to chase eagles down the river, pelicans, blue herons. She is super territorial, and so she has not taken a drone down that I know of. But we do a lot of education. I try and do at least one post a year about the drones. We did have a big drone show downtown a couple weeks ago, and I did reach out to the event coordinators about it. Did some talking with U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the IDNR. And the interesting thing about drones is there's not a whole lot that you can do to prevent them at a nest site location. But the Migratory Bird Treaty Act does protect nesting birds. So if something would happen with a bird and a drone, criminal charges could still happen. It just is not put in place to be preventive. I have talked to a couple people as a result of this in terms of could we get a bill introduced in the state of Illinois to help prevent drones around nest sites, especially known nest sites like this one. And I've talked with National Audubon, their legislative folks, because there was a similar incident actually when I brought this up during an Audubon meeting in Michigan, where they were having trouble at some nesting locations, keeping drones away. So maybe more to come out of this. It would be great to see more protection. If you're on a national preserve, national park, drones are banned there. You can't fly in national parks. Why? Because they're trying to protect the wildlife. So you would think that they would have a little bit more protections in locations like this too. So something to work on though. It's definitely on my list of to-dos to see if we can make a change for at least downtown Rockford in the state of Illinois. As far as a city bird, how did this happen? My daughter, both my daughters, I used to drag around when they were very young to the Audubon meetings. One of them continued to stay involved in her teenage years and often asked why she couldn't be a board member. And I'm like, sure, like you can be a junior board member, but let's take it to the board first and see. And they had approved that. And so I said, well, now that you're a board member, like you have to have a project. So this was her project. So it was actually her idea to advocate that the peregrine be the Rockford official city bird. So she wrote some letters to the mayor and highlighted in her letters, you know, the conservation success story of peregrines in the state of Illinois, how they represent recovery, resilience, and adaptability, and their ability to bring awareness to birds and their conservation needs. She started first a petition at change.org. She got almost 500 signatures, maybe more. This is when I took the screenshot to put our presentations together. The community was very actively involved. It did take about a year for the mayor to make this decision. And I do have, he was willing to come to an event for us, and he gave this great speech, which I'm going to play because I think he says some meaningful things and how the peregrines, what they mean to Rockford and the community.
Think about the peregrine falcon, and you see that it has brought such joy to so many different people in our community, from different walks of life, from the avid birds to the young students in the class. It has really brought such joy to so many, and I want to give a special thank you to Jennifer as president of the Sin City Audubon Society. Appreciate the leadership and the society for their support and incredible natural resources that our community has to offer to the city, and especially with the falcons. I would also say you have a tremendous advocate in both Jennifer and Jackie because they have been advocating for a city bird, I think, since I became mayor. Since last year. Their advocacy has been, I would say it would be well noted even in Springfield. It would be well noted your aggressive advocacy, and it is deeply appreciated, and it's really exciting to be here with you today. Jack, your bio is awesome. Youth conservationist of the year, that's phenomenal. Your involvement and your passion of birding, especially as a young adult, is just really inspiring. So I just want to say thank you. On top of that, you were the one who designed the brochure for now the City of Rockford bird, which we will get into. And I want to say a special thank you to Red Hill Birding and the Chicago Peregrine program for their important work with our falcons. So it is right now my honor, and I guess Jackie, if you Whereas the rich natural resources of Rockford, Illinois support more than 300 bird species, but only one breeding pair of peregrine falcons can be found. And whereas once an Illinois endangered and threatened species list, peregrine falcons are a conservation success story in our state. And whereas peregrine falcons are a testament to the resilience, adaptability, and recovery by establishing a nest site in Rockford, Illinois, at the Rockford Register-Star news tower. And whereas female peregrine Louise has successfully hatched and fledged 7 young peregrine falcons on the ledge of our news tower. And whereas evidence of nest fidelity is very high, as demonstrated by the use of the nest site since 2018, this ensures longevity of this species in Rockford. And whereas the community can watch the development of the Rockford peregrine falcons from the hatch to fledge via a nest camera provided by Sin City Audubon. Now therefore, I, Thomas P. McMillan, as the mayor of the city of Rockford, do hereby proclaim peregrine falcon the official city bird of the city of Rockford. Thank you.
And as a result of the city bird, the just having the Nest Cam available and having it streaming for the public to watch. There's been just a ton of community engagement. I think our website and our social media, at least on Facebook, has grown tremendously because of it. We host a naming contest every year, allow people to submit the names of their choice, and then people can vote on them. And I do try and make it so there's some sort of connection to Rockford with the names. Local schools have been watching Nest Cams in their classrooms. I think for the past 4 years, teachers started reaching out to me early on. We have done some presentations. I think one of the first times we had a school involved in the naming contest, it was Flynn Middle School, and their mascot happens to be the Falcons. So we did have on their last day of school a few years ago, we went with Falconer, who happened to have a Peregrine, did some education with the teacher who invited us there. And I think we rolled 400 students through a 15-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute presentation. I make these little bird cards. So there's a Louise card, there's a Brian card. I had made a Flynn card for Flynn that year. I do have a Monty card for Monty this year, who's named after Montessori School. And we are scheduled to go to that classroom this fall. And then we do the live banding via Zoom. And like I said, we have a huge outreach. It spans across the globe. I know there was somebody from Italy on this year. Previous years, we've had people from Canada, who I'm assuming are Louise folks who've known Louise from that particular nest site. And we also get a huge Middle Eastern fallowing, which I think has a lot to do with falconry. We do spend some time down at Friday night city markets. Iconic building sits right across the street from City Market. So they allow us to set up in their parking lot, which is also where people can park for City Market. So they walk by our table. Again, we bring one of the Falconer's Peregrines down, and we do a lot of education with the community down at the city markets. And a lot of people, I would say last year when we did this, we were down there four different Friday nights. And I'd say about half the people didn't realize there were peregrine falcons on the building that they were standing next to. So it's a great opportunity for us to do outreach to the community and let them know about these birds. And just a little bit about the news tower. It is the iconic building now, but it was built in 1930. It is part of the National Historic Registry, or the National Register of Historic Places. It's a Art Deco style building. The architect is Jesse Barloga. He's actually got quite a few homes in our Rockford area that are significant in terms of architecture as well, but this was a building that he designed. It was originally designed to be bigger, but because of the stock market crash, they downsized the building itself. And this was the ad in the paper when the building first opened. And when I talk about the cupola, or the lantern that's on top of the building, this is actually missing right now. They brought it down last fall to do some repairs on it. But Jesse Barloga called this the Lantern of Liberty, because it symbolizes the importance of the free press as part of our constitutional rights, which I think is so important. And of course, we don't have a local newspaper anymore. Well, I mean, we do, but it's published in, I think, Milwaukee. And it really is not the newspaper that it used to be, unfortunately. But definitely missed the Register Star newspaper being there. They did a lot in the beginning for us in terms of publishing articles about the birds and really embracing them when they're on the building. And I'm so glad that Iconic has done the same thing. I do visit other buildings. This happens to be where I work. I work at UW Health, so a lot of people at work know me and know my affiliation with Mississippi Audubon and the Peregrine Falcon. So there is a building called Camelot Tower that they show up on a lot. And the folks that are on the 11th floor of that building are some of my colleagues, and they'll send me photos all the time when Louise shows up there. The camera, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. We actually had our annual dinner scheduled, and Mary Hennon was our presenter that year. And I had heard before she came to town that there was a peregrine hanging out of the building. So I had let her know, and she had actually heard from somebody else about it too. And we got in touch with the newspaper at the time, and both got up the night before the dinner. And while I was up there, I said, "Can I put a camera up here?" Like immediately, like I don't even know if the birds are nesting up here yet, but can we put a camera up? And it was just asking to get in there as soon as possible. And for us, lucky Louise did nest, and you can see her. My daughter did a lot of the initial work when we were setting it up, and Louise always knows when we're on the 8th floor. She's always looking in the windows at us. But it is an outdoor nest cam. It was installed in 2018, so they've been up there for a long time. They've been high quality in terms of um, what we get out of it. It's nice because they're plugged in to the wall, so we don't have to worry about batteries. We did have an issue the first 2 years with Louise wanting to sit on the camera, and she knocked it off more than once. So then we would lose the views and have to wait until after banding day or during bandy day to make some corrections to the camera to reinstall it. And so after that, I think I spent an hour at the hardware store one day, like, what am I going to do? Because the register star is asking me, what do I want to do with the camera this year if it's going to fall off? This pole that they had it on, it's not going to work very well. And so I went to the hardware store not knowing what I was looking for, just kind of wandering around there one day for an hour. And then ended up in the plumbing aisle with all the PVC. And I thought, well, you know what? I think the camera could fit in there. I think we could mount it in there. And then I think if Louise tried to sit on it, it won't knock the camera off the battery anymore. So I took all my parts to Chuck at the Register Star, and he helped me build my vision. And I jokingly told him I was a engineering genius, and he just laughed laughed at me. But it's worked. Surprisingly, it's worked. It's held up, and Louise continues to sit on it. It's one of her favorite spots. And the S Cam's great because it holds 5 days of recording. This is what it looks like on my phone. It's kind of funny that the birds show up as a person when I get a notification. But I'm able to scroll through there. I generally check cameras every day, even in the off season, because sometimes we have other things that show up, or we get these great poses from Louise, and it's hard to believe that this comes from a Nest camera mounted on our building. This was just from the other day. But we've also had great horned owls. One year showed up twice. So it's another reason I like to scroll through. This was after the fledglings had already left the building. I believe it was in the fall. So interesting to watch and see what shows up on the cameras. So I try and look at them every day. And then we also get interesting things like this. And these are some videos I'll share before I open it to any questions or comments. But this is a bat. This is the first time I've seen a bat come to the ledge as a prey that they've caught. Not surprising because, right, it's a mammal that flies, but I was kind of surprised when I saw it. They've also brought gulls and crows, and yellow-billed cuckoos seem to be a favorite bird of theirs, and pigeons, which we have plenty of in downtown Rockford. And every year, the babies are quite interested in the cameras. They were pulling on the cord this year, so we did retape it back down. And then just the other day on the west side, I caught video of the older ones doing exactly this to the face of the camera. So I have new video of them tapping on the camera as well. And then this is by far my favorite video. I saw this, and it's this feather kind of floating around. And I thought, oh, like in a wind vortex or something. Louise also saw it, comes floating down from the roof, and just kind of like watches it forever. And it took me a while, but I finally realized that this feather is caught on a cobweb. which is why it's kind of sticking around there and fluttering around in the wind. But it's a lot of fun to watch her interact with this feather floating around. I think this might be the last video I have. I don't know how we're doing for time. It looks like we got about 10 minutes for any kind of comments or questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jennifer. This is really awesome. I especially love all of these kind of great videos and snapshots of just peregrine life that maybe a lot of us really never get a chance to see or encounter, but they're just everyday things that they're doing and engaging with their surroundings. Definitely a big round of virtual applause here for Jennifer and the Kuroda clan for all their work on peregrines on with these birds in Rockford. Thank you so much, Anne, for your time presenting this evening. Looks like we do have a question that popped up in the chat here. Christina, you want to unmute and ask it yourself?
It was, if you don't want to ask, it was the most dramatic year for us. I mean, having two birds in the river. You know, I'm so thankful we haven't had it before, but we also learned they swim quite well, although I don't want to see them land in the river again. But yeah, we had several birds come down over the years, and this year it was Lincoln and Libby. They both came down to the street. We ran them up to the 8th floor, and then they both had issues again. So thankfully they're all flying really well, and are uninjured and are out there doing their fledgling things right now, learning how to hunt with the adults and all that kind of stuff.
I have a question. So it seems like Louise is the rock star here. She really is kind of holding things down, and there's been a bit of a rotation of males coming through. Have there been other males that have also come through or presented themselves as possibilities in the area? Or has it just been the ones that Louise has ultimately mated with?
There was one, so I think they come through as transient or passing through, or just checking out to see what's happening in Rockford. I don't know, they might be the migrants. But there was one year, and Mary might remember this. I think his name was Red Dog. He hung around for a couple days, and we had him on video. And then earlier this spring, another, I don't know if it was a male or female. It's hard when you only see a brief interaction on the camera, the Nest camera. I can't get a good ID on the bands, but there was an adult male that was hanging around, or an adult. I don't know if it's male or female. I shouldn't say that. And you could see that bird hanging around for a couple days downtown too. It would do flybys. You could see 3 adults flying by the camera on the news tower. So I don't know if those are migrants, other juveniles out exploring, territory from our Illinois and Wisconsin birds, or, Mary might be able to answer that question as well.
Certainly with the seeing them in the spring, it's probably migrants coming through. You have the northern population breeders who have to come through as adults to come back up to breed, but then you do have that floating, usually it's 1-year-old bird that has gone south for the winter after dispersing out of his nest, and then is coming back north to find some territory somewhere. Fall, but usually, they're just passing through. But in spring, yeah, it's looking to see if the territory is open, can they get in or not. And to back up to something before, when Jennifer said they run those birds up to the 8th floor, the elevator's not working. She had to get those birds walk up 8 flights. Fledge watchers, dedicated people, some silly people who shouldn't be hopping fences and hurting themselves do that too. You know who you are. But wow, what a great group of people.
Yeah, the one night that I was down there and the elevator was broken, I had just run Lincoln up, and that he came back down. No, it was Libby that came back down, but didn't come down in the water. She came down the street that time, so I had to go back up again. So it was 16 flights of stairs. And I'm super upset that my iPhone didn't acknowledge, but I went up 16 flights. It only said I went up, I think, 10. Like, I went up 16 flights of stairs.
Wow, true rock star stuff there. Leave it to technology to shortchange you. You definitely burn way more calories. I got
think
what?
uh,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, May.
One more thing. I think it would be a really interesting thing if we can somewhere in the future that satellite tracking has advanced to the point where it sort of works off your cell phone instead of the old time radio signals that would bounce off cities. And the way we know that Louise had done that, sort of migrating up to Jefferson and that, is from her popping on a web camera. But if you had satellite trackers on them, you would actually get to see that wandering. And with her going up in the winter, she did that after she was already established breeder at Rockford. So she did it before she came and bred at Rockford. And then she was hanging out in Jefferson. And then the female who migrated, who was the female in Jefferson, was a migrant, came in later and kicked her out. So then she came down to Rockford and breed. And then that next winter, she still went up to Jefferson. And I think it was last year, in Jennifer could remind me if this is right, that we caught a picture of Brian in the middle of winter up in Wisconsin. So for the most part, our adults stay here year round, but there's still this wandering going on that these adults are exhibiting. Just an interesting thing to note.
It is. I would love to have a tracker on Louise. It would be, I think, it also being able to, one of those things I think that would also engage the community, right? If you made that kind of, share it after the fact, not share it live, but kind of share her traveling patterns. Because I think that's so fascinating when you see some of these other traveling patterns of birds across the country and where they go and where they end up. And it's just interesting for people like us that watch these nest cams a little too much.
No such thing. So I don't see any other questions, so maybe I'll close out with one more, but I'm just curious, has there been any evidence of any other pairs trying to nest in the Rockford area?
I don't know. I occasionally will hear from the fire department. They had found an unbanded juvenile on top of, it was a male, on top of another building. So that we have another tall building called the Fost. And I think, and John can chime in too, but at one time there was, some peregrine, maybe it was a male or a female hanging around that building. And I don't know that they ever nested, but we also don't, we don't have any way to know if they had nested there previously or not. I've heard that there might be a nest up in the Beloit area of a pair of peregrines, but I can't confirm that. And I've never found the location. Someone told me where the location was, and I went up there and looked around, and I never saw any peregrines up there. But it's the only known pair that we know of in Rockford. And I don't know how or if it would grow beyond that. I mean, there are some pretty close, I think, nest sites in the Chicago region. Again, I would turn to Mary for that, but I think Rockford probably could sustain another pair, except Louise is so territorial. I don't know, like, if she'd let them stay downtown with her.
Yeah, it's up to the birds to decide whether they tolerate them coming in or not. We have them literally across the street from each other, which is crazy. But if you think of another bend in a river and I hunt to the west and the pair across the street hunts to the east, they'll figure it out. So yeah, I definitely think there's room for more in Rockford, but time will tell.
All right, and not seeing any other questions here, I think we'll go ahead and close it out here for the night. So once again, big virtual round of applause here for Jennifer Kuroda. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us, talking about your work and these awesome peregrines and their tails. Really appreciate it. As a reminder, everybody, this is one of many programs that we're doing as part of the Year of the Peregrine celebrations, celebrating 25 years of peregrine falcons as Chicago's official city bird as well. So we're basically sister cities in this regard. Right?
Yeah.
So definitely check out our website for some more programs, including some that are happening this week and more through the rest of the year as well. So with that said, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great evening, and be on the lookout for the recording and further peregrine events over the course of 2024. Have a good night, y'all.
Thank you.